When Keith was murdered and we started arriving in Independence Square, there was a trickle of people. I figured it's Trinidadians, it is what it is. And then all of a sudden, thousands and thousands of people just started to arrive. Keith came to me with another company I had. Keith was just an excellent, just a good human being. Keith used to run PH on his off time. He would never allow anybody in his car to intimidate another passenger. Women especially used to look out for Keith because they knew when driving with Keith that there would be no issues. It was a very safe drive. And Keith's nickname, in fact, was Simple. And he was a DJ in his off time or when he wasn't running PH. And our eldest son, Robert, he started to DJ around the same time, just as a hobby kind of thing. And he would accompany Keith at different parties, and Keith would do the same thing to help each other out, DJing and that sort of thing. Keith was just an ordinary Joe. That is who Keith Noel was. And for Keith Noel to suffer that, very painful, and he was chopped to death. For him to suffer that, I think that is where the real drive came. And I think that is what really and truly propelled people to support not only Keith Noel, but the Keith Noel Committee.
Having done Keith Noel in 2005, what is your opinion of today's murder rate?
Everybody keeps asking, where did this situation come from? How come Trinidad and Tobago, that has always been maybe very much on the slow side of the Caribbean, we are not hustlers and must-have and all that sort of thing. We've been fairly content with our lot, all right, over the years. And for this to reach where it is now, there are issues behind it. One of them is the illegal drug trade and the cartels that are operating in Trinidad. And I don't hear anybody speaking about that. At least nobody from Children has identified why this has happened. You have issues of the 2 years of COVID and no school. So you had 15-year-olds that were dropped out of school during COVID and never went back to school. What are these kids doing? Crime is not about locking up people. I see people mouthing and going on about bring back the hangman, etc., etc. I'm totally against that. You cannot hang your way out of this. You're not going to jail your way out of this. You have to fix the society. And look at Tobago. Tobago has probably the highest murder rate in the Western Hemisphere. Imagine that. Sleepy Tobago. Okay? How do you explain that? And the authorities, I don't see any comment coming from the authorities. So until you figure out a way as to why the crime is happening and how you're going to deal with it, then we're going to see 550 murders or 600 murders this year. And next year, we're going to see 650.
What did you hope to achieve when you all did the Death March?
Something that we did not achieve, which was really and truly raising the awareness for people to stand up for what is right. Stop fooling around with it. Stop putting in more burglar bars and more alarms and cameras is not the answer to crime in the country. 19 years ago, we were marching in downtown Port of Spain, trying to raise awareness for people to understand the serious nature of what was happening. And what we're reaping today is basically the non-result of the Death March. Because I don't think, as much as people supported it and wanted to be part of it, and even if they couldn't actually be there, they still supported it. But we have to do more than that. And that is what we were attempting to do. Raise the awareness that this thing could not continue to happen, to terrorize this population. It could not happen, it could not continue. And that's 19 years ago. And here it is today. Look at what we're talking about today.
Let's talk a little about who is involved with helping you.
The employees of my company and co-workers of Keith. And they are from all parts of Trinidad, from deep south, east, Port of Spain, central, you name it. And we would go on a Saturday. The first outing we did was in Keith's own community in Belmont. The second outing we went to Matlot. I remember a lady in Matlot saying, "It have no crime up here, but what going on in town, bound to reach here." I sign in, man. I'm going to sign it, all right? There's a little parlor in Matlot. And that is how we did it. So then we went to Tobago. At the time, Tobago's population, I think, was 55,000 people. And we signed over 7,000 signatures in Tobago on one Saturday. I remember they went on a Sunday. It was on the Maracas Road. by the pillars, getting people to sign, and people stop their cars on the way to the beach to sign. I think that all in all, that part of it, we really achieved what we set out to do to create that awareness.
Tell me about the format of that march.
Now, the Death March came from World War II. But I figured something Trinidad needs to wake up. People told me, oh God, the Death March? I don't want to be involved in nothing like the Death March. I remember Mrs. Manning at the time. She was the Minister of Education, I believe, 2005. I have nothing against the march, but I don't like the word Death March. And I figured we hit it right, because this is exactly what it is. You have 300 dead people, 300 dead citizens of this country, and let us all be very real about it. And therefore, whether you like the term Death March or you don't like the term Death March, it is what it is. I was more surprised than anybody on the success of that march. We had the BBC cover the march. I'm a stickler for time. So 9:30 was the time the march was going to be moving. Peter Telfer, now deceased, had his conch shell. And at 9:30 on the dot, Peter Telfer blew that conch shell. And of course, the significance of blowing a conch shell is the gathering of the people. When the fishing boats would come in the villages, somebody would blow the conch shell to let the villagers know that the boats were in, come and buy a fish. We use the conch shell as a gathering of the people, and it was amplified. And to hear, it was an eerie kind of feeling. We had no music during the march. We only had drumming. So we had Peter Telfer with his mawas, and he sketched out a thing, because I wanted 300 dead people to be in the march, the walking dead, to be able to show the country what 300 dead people looks like. We lie down in front of the Red House. We lay down all the dead people in a row, 300 people, all the dead people on the ground. I remember seeing people looking through the railings of Woodford Square, people crying. It was very emotional what happened there. And the last performance was all the dead people rose up, and they all had a long red ribbon, and they lifted the ribbon in the air, signifying the blood of these murdered people. So there was a little theatrics, and it just came about as we went along.
What happened with the march?
Leading up to the march, imagine I filed an application with the police service for permission to march 6 weeks before the 22nd of October. I get a call Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Mr. Cadiz, permission to march has been granted. You could come and pick up the certificate or whatever it is. These people took 6 weeks to give us permission to march, and I get it hours before the actual march.
Your march was estimated at 15,000 persons, but you had 100 signatures.
Former President Max Richards was very accommodating, in that it was a non-issue for us to present the president, because again, in this country, you have no right as a citizen to petition the parliament. I have to go through a politician. There is no facility, there is no process whereby we can say, we want this, okay? There is nobody to send it to unless you send it to your friend who is your MP. And then if the party that person belongs to decides, we ain't going down that road, okay? Tell Cadiz, one from here. Then your voice is not heard. That year, Max Richards, at the opening of the parliament, mentioned the Keith Noel Committee.
The crime situation is extremely complex, and I often wonder, what could we do as citizens to reduce this level of crime?
When I went to Maraval 40 whatever odd years ago, it was a very sleepy village then. I still refer to it as the sleepy village of Maraval. Completely opposite the Maraval police station is a drug den. I pass twice a day, going to work and going home in the afternoon. How is that possible? We have had 7 gang-related murders in the sleepy village of Maraval for this year alone. There's not a single kilo of drugs in this country that was not bought with US dollars cash. There's a whole society, in fact, that you left floundering for decades, okay? And you need to start the fix. Your education system. Look at the mess that our all those poor little children going to primary school. What exactly are you planning for these poor children? And that is what your education system is producing. Okay, we go on and lord it over. What about the other 19,999 children Because if you leave it as it is, in 5 years' time, it is going to be that much worse. 10 years' time, Trinidad is not going to be a place that you want to live. Okay? That is where we are heading. And sorry to say, the politicians in this country on both sides of the aisle have to take 100% responsibility. I hear somebody, the newest thing now is blame the mothers. So if you're blaming the mothers for the criminals, who are you blaming for the dotish politicians? The fathers? I do not understand how Trinidad and Tobago have reached where we have reached, where it is no longer country first. We are going to lose this country if we do not wake up in the morning and said, which is the slogan of the Keith Noel Committee, enough is enough. We have to send a very clear message to the leadership of these parties. Enough is enough.
What are the other social issues that raise awareness because of the Keith Noel March?
I think one of the things that came out of the Keith Noel, especially with the signatures, is there are a lot of good people, a lot of solid citizens in this country. People genuinely came out of their house, came down and signed the petition. And I thought if we could do that in Maclot, that will be a signal that we could fix the place. The Trinidadians are genuinely concerned about their country, about the future of the country, future of their children.
So if a miracle happened and you could take some action, what would you do?
I don't need a miracle. To get it in people's brain that what we are doing is to the detriment of all of us. It is not only to one sector, it is not only to one race, one religion, one party. You have a parliament that really and truly is very warm. We had a situation the other day with a parliamentarian with a hot mic, just saying exactly who he was. That is who you are. That is what you are thinking. Okay? So don't come and tell me the mothers, because if it is the mothers that is mothers have created this problem in this country, I don't know how we're going to fix it. It's not the mother. The country needs to get back to a country where there's law and order. There are consequences for your actions. We need leadership in this country, which does not exist at present, to carry the country forward. Where's the leadership? Louts.
Yes.
That is what you're describing me? I'm a lout? No, man. But you need somebody to take up the mantle and bring the country with them. But when you're using that kind of unparliamentary language in parliament, okay, where are we going? That is where your brain is, that's where your mind is. That is how you want to think about this country. For election coming up in 2025, where are these people coming from? People who genuinely respect each other, genuinely want to see, I don't care what color jersey you have on, but we want the same thing. Okay, where are we getting that from?
Well, if you're not seeing it, then you're saying there's no hope for this country.
If we continue in the vein that we are in, no, this country will die a horrible death. I wrote the other day my post of starting my business in 1980, and there was no foreign exchange, none. And my business required me to bring in certain components, etc. And I go to the central bank. There's EC1 or EC0 at the time, which was an exchange control. You had to fill out a form to get US dollars. And they gave me an allocation of $5,000 US for the year. All right. Well, I found all kinds of ways and means to find US because I had to. Okay, I had to survive. And look at where Trinidad and Tobago has reached. And people need to understand when you see things like that happening, it will affect you directly. That is going to affect you in no small way. Don't think of it as the 1%, the usual stupidness, okay? 1%, take all the money. No, that is not. That is mismanagement of an economy, a very strong, stable economy. And what did you do to it? You mismanaged it in the worst way. And that is why we ended up where we are. What are these louts, as you call them? Where is the hope for them? What are you going to do about them? You shut down, I don't know if you remember, in apprenticeship schemes that Texaco had, that TNTech had, that Carney had. Master craftsmen. The majority of people of a certain age in this country went through that process of apprenticeship and became master craftsmen. I remember a constituent coming to me and telling me, if it was not for the hotel school, he does not know where he would have ended up. This is a serious business to be talking here. And I'm not seeing anybody mouthing that sort of for the future of the country. Nobody is talking about it.
Is there anything else you wish to add as we bring this session to an end?
Fix your education system. An education system will take minimum 5 years to show results, but start today. If you had started 5 years ago, you would have seen the difference already. And then everything else will fall into place.
Thank you very much, Stephen Cadiz, the person who created the Keith Noel Death March.